Doctor, did you send for me?
Yes, Insane. What's all that commotion in Mrs. Blodgett's room?
Well, haven't you heard, Doctor? It's a boy.
Well, what does he want?
But it's her son.
I don't care who it is. I left orders for that woman. I have no visitors. Throw him out.
Well, Doctor, he can't walk.
Well, sober him up and get him out of here.
But I...
Never mind. Forget it. Tell me, did you look at the man in 203?
Oh, yes, Doctor. He wants to know if you will give him something for his stomach.
Tell him I'll give him $1.65 and a bridge lamp. Nice. Get the charts. It's time to make the rounds.
Very well, Doctor. We'll start with Ward C. This way.
Oh, no.
Doctor, this is Mr. Swick.
No, Doctor, do you think I'll live?
Yes, but I wouldn't advise it.
Whoops, wrong Marx. That was Groucho. We need to talk about Karl Marx. Welcome to Philosophy Online. This week we're going to talk about Karl Marx and Marxism. You might be surprised to know that Marx was a philosopher. Indeed, he had a PhD in philosophy. To understand the philosophy of Karl Marx, you must understand the world in which he lived. The world in which he lived was shaped largely by the Industrial Revolution. It changed the size of cities, the work of people, and the health of city dwellers. The population moved to the cities to work in the factories where they would have a steady wage. Between 1801 and 1841, the population of London doubled. In that same period of time, the population of Leeds tripled, and workers' housing was substandard. Cities expanded rapidly to accommodate growing factories and provide housing for workers. The growth created deplorable conditions. Housing was close to factories so people could walk to work, but that meant that pollution was close to their homes. The water was saturated with chemicals, and the atmosphere was heavy with soot and smoke. The land hosted heaping garbage dumps, and workers crowded into tenements, along with rats and insects and disease. In 1831, the death rate in Liverpool was 21 to 1,000 people. By 1844, it was 34.8 per 1,000. Poor factory conditions caused innumerable accidents and illnesses. There were no labor laws until 1802 anywhere in the world. Workers were mistreated, and working people as a class increased during the industrial era. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, most people farmed, or were self-employed merchants, or were self-employed craftsmen, and they enjoyed a flexible work schedule, having direct control over their own work. The Industrial Revolution turned the majority into a working class. Now they were dependent on wages and not wares. They were dependent on the company rather than their abilities. Arthur Young, an economist, spoke for many corporate minds when he said, "Everyone but an idiot knows that the lower class must be kept poor, or they will never be industrious." They were industrious. The workers worked hard, 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days per week. And machines forced them. Machines forced them to work harder, to work without rest, and to work with the repetition of machinery. Repeated tasks created monotony. Low wages barely provided enough food to eat, and once you became sick, injured, or old, you were no longer useful to the company and you were discarded, even if it was a result of the company's neglect. There was no workman's compensation, no retirement, no disability. Children as young as 5 worked 10 to 14 hours per day. Orphanages commonly farmed their children out to work, and women were paid half the wage of men. Workers were disciplined into working hard. Children were often kicked or struck, and adults were controlled under the real threat of being fired. Lines of unemployed waited to take your job, and layoffs threw workers into the street when the product went unsold. There was no unemployment, no government intervention. In defense of the defenseless worker rose Karl Marx. You'll learn more about him and his philosophy as you read the chapter and do the assignments this week. Here's to a good week in philosophy.